Pasuk Yud Beis, we dealt with the Malach appearing to the wife of Manoach. These are the parents of Shimshon. We don't know the name of the mother, but the Isha was considered more chashuva in that situation. We explained Manoach, according to Chazal, was an Amoritz, was not a Ben Torah, and his wife was Zoriz, and merited that the Malach appeared to her, and that because one of the reasons it says, because Manoach, Vayelech Manoach achrei ishto, and that's really the act of an Amoritz. He didn't know the Allah. They followed his wife. So Vayomer Manoach ata yavod varecha maya mishpata nar maseyu. Manoach now, because the first time he hadn't met the Malach had appeared to the Isha and gave a besora that she was going to have a child, and the child had to be cared for in a certain way. That he was going to be a Nazir mibetem. And now Manoach has an opportunity to hear directly from the Malach. Vayomer Malach Hashem Manoach mikol asher amarti el aisha tishamer. Again, he says that you should follow exactly what I told your wife. Mikol asher yetzei migefen hayayin lo tochal. That from his birth he should not eat the products of the gefen, which is the standard for a nazir. The yain v'sheichar al teisht. He cannot drink wine. The chol tuma al toichal. He shouldn't eat dvorim tamei. Kol asher tzivisa tishmor. You notice it doesn't say anything about touching a mace or coming into contact with tumas mace, because we're going to see tonight some aforshim that explain to us that the Nazirus of Shimshon is different than a regular Nazir. Nazir is, Stam Nazirus is 30 days. If a person said already Nazir, he was a Nazir for 30 days. And a regular Nazir can't come close to wine, can't drink wine. By the way, they can have a gnaw from it, they just can't eat it. They cannot be metame themselves. They have to grow their hair, they can't take a haircut, but it's only for 30 days. And they can't go to a funeral. They can't be metame lemesim. Now we'll see a riot tonight that Nazir Shimshon, which is this Nazirus from birth, it's very unusual, did not include the prohibition of tumas mace. Like it says here, it says don't eat tumah, but it doesn't say anything about tumas mace. Posuk Tetzvav. Vayomer Manoach el Malach Hashem, na'atzrana otach. We want to hold you back. V'naseh lefanecha gedizim. We want to give you a meal. You see, the Meforshim understand that Manoach thought that this was a Navi, not a Malach. So therefore, he's offering him a meal. Vayomer Malach Hashem el Manoach, im ta'atzreni lo ochal b'lachmecha. If you hold me back, I'm not going to eat of your bread. However, v'im taseh ola l'Hashem talena. But if you offer a korban as an ola, Hashem will accept it. Ki lo yada Manoach ki malach Hashem hu. And he didn't. That's why initially he offered him to feed the man the gedi izim, but the malach had to respond to him. No, offer it as a korban. Remember, we learned last week, Mishkan Shiloh still exists. And therefore, you were not allowed to offer a korban outside of Shiloh, right? The bamos, you could have a private bama in your backyard and offer either an ola, which was completely burnt, or a shlamim, which you could partake in the meat, in your backyard bama. But that was only in the 14 years when the Mishkan was in Gilgal, with Yoshua before they moved it to Shiloh. Then it was in Shiloh for 369 years. That's the period of time that we're dealing with still, the periods of the Shoftim. The last Shofet is Eli HaKohen. Eli HaKohen is killed. He falls backwards and he breaks his neck when the Plishtim conquer and destroy Mishkan Shiloh and take the Aron prisoner. So Eli is the last Shofet. And then Shmuel, because Eli, remember, takes Shmuel under his wing. After Eli dies, Shmuel becomes the Navi. And over the next 13 years, there'll be the Maisa with Shaul and the beginnings of David. So after the Mishkan Shiloh is destroyed, so then the Mizbeach is moved to the city of Nov, Ira Kohanim, for 13 years. And then after Nov is destroyed by Shaul, chasing after David, it goes to the city of Givon for 44 years. Before, that's 57 years. During those 57 years, you were allowed to use a bama. But l'chora, in this period of time, you're not allowed to use a bama. So the Meforshim say it was a hoyrosh shah that the malach allowed it in this. Hashem allowed it in this case. It was a hoyrosh shah only, because otherwise you're not allowed to use a bama in this period of time. Pasuk Yud Zayin. Vayomer Manoach Malach Hashem Mishmecha. Manoach asked the Malach, "What is your name?" Ki avod varcha v'chi badnucha. We want to give you proper covet. Im yavolanu shlichus davar meitcha mishnidav nakir shmecha. Says Rashi, v'chi badnucha naseh masha tishlach lanu. We'll be able, by knowing your name, how to give thanks to you. Akorsatov, kishni, like the read says, kishni reshis kaimet varecha naskir lishvach. We will mention you in praise. We need to know your name.
If you went over to someone in Hebrew in Israel and you said Mishmecha, they'll laugh at you.
Right, and so the Radak's jumping on what Sidney said V'lo Amar Mashmecha Kimishpat Haloshon Shelo Lemer Mi Eila Al Etzem Chai Medaber V'Hashem Eno Etzem. So the Radak points out it's not the normal phraseology. But he says there are other places where it says, like in Breshis, Mashmecha or Mashmo. Maybe because the Malach is a spiritual being. Maybe that's why I use a different language. Ki ein lamalach guf, the Hashem kimoa etzem, and maybe the name and the etzem of the person is the same thing. Right? We're a combination of a guf and a neshama. So that's why you say mashmecha, not mishmecha. But maybe here it's different because he's a malach. But there can't be, because we're going to see soon, after they put the korban and the fire goes up, the malach jumps into the fire and goes up. It's only at that point, say the Meforshim, that Manoach recognized that this is a malach. Up until now, but at this point, he doesn't know he's a malach. Says Radak, Yesh Lefarish Lefi Shaya Beinei Manoach Navi Gadol V'Nichbad. Because Manoach thought this was a Navi. V'Adam Gadol. Right? A great man is known even to somebody who doesn't know him. So therefore you could use Mishmecha. That's how the Radak explains. Pasuk Yud Ches. Vayomer lo Malach Hashem, Lama zeh tishal lishmi? What are you asking my name for? V'hu Peli. Peli is hidden. Rashi says Mechusa. It's a hidden name. What are you asking my name for? It's a secret name. Tamidu mishtaneh ve'en yadu lama mishtaneh. And I guess sometimes it changes. By the way, the Sifri no, I don't want to learn this Sifri. So it's a hidden name, says the Malbim. Ani eina mevakesh kavod v'tiferes mina adam. Because remember, Manoach wanted to provide kavod for him. So the Malach says, I don't need kavod and tiferes from a human being. Ki malach ani. V'gam shmi peli. It's a hidden name. Lo yadu shochnei chomer. Physical beings will not understand the name, says the Malbim, become kevan. Like we know, when the three angels came to Avram, each one had a different shlichus. One was to tell Sarah she could have birth. One was to destroy Sodom. One was to save Lot. And apparently their name changes based on their shlichus. And Hashem uses malachim to do wonders. Kemoshe katuv umafli lasot. So now, haya atashmo peli. Now, Chazal in Breishis Rabbah of Naso, where it explains the din of Nazirus, says that the reason why his name was Peli, Shayashmo Peli, Al Shema Nazirus. What does that have to do with Nazirus? It says, Ki yafli lindor neder. The word yafli refers to speech. How does someone become a Nazir? Through speech. By the way, what do we say? Rofei laso, mafli laso. The Asher Yotzar. How do we conclude the bracha of Asher Yotzar? We do it, we say umafli laso. The special uniqueness of the human being, certainly over the animal, is the fact that he has speech. And speech is used to create the Nazirus. So since the shlichus of this malach was to tell the parents that they have to bring him up as a Nazir, so we use this kind of concept peli, which is like from the word umafli laso. Okay. Pasuk Yutes. Vayikach Manoach Gedi Azives Amincha. So Manoach took the Gedi and the Mincha Vayal al Atzur LaHashem, and he put it on a rock, which was going to be used as the Mizbeach. And again, the Radak quote mentions Umashalem Manoach Olal Atzur LaHashem B'Shas Isra Abamois. As we've learned tonight, it's prohibited to offer on a bama. Shekolzman shaya oel mod b'Shilo nes rabamas. As long as the Mishkan was in Shiloh, the bamas are prohibited. Amru Chazal in Zvachim Kuf Yutes, hoyro asra haisa, ki inei amalach amar lo, v'im taseh olah Hashem talena. That if you offer an olah, Hashem will accept it. There's no greater hora asra coming. Remember, Reb Yehuda Nasi, in the year 180 CE, made a decision to write down Torah Shebal Peh as a Mishnah. So the Gemara says, how could Rabbi Yehuda Nasi do it? It's a Isser to write the words of Torah Shebal Peh writing, and you cannot, Torah Shebal you can't say through Peh. So Chazal there says, Eis lashos Hashem eferu Torah secha. Was the whole Rosh Hashanah. Rebbe saw there was a need. The Jewish people are going to go into exile. If they don't write down and take the Mishnayos with them, they're not going to be able to learn properly. Same thing. Here, there's even a greater Hoy Rosh Hashanah because it's coming directly from Hashem, from a Malach Hashem. So that answers that issue. Vayal atzur Hashem umafli lasot. And the angel is going to do a pele. He's going to do something because fire. The Radak says one miracle that the Malach did was fire came out of the rock, and then as the fire went up and up, the Malach jumped in and went up to Hashem. That's the mafli lasso that the Malach is supposed to do. Manoach v'ishto and Manoach and his wife were zoche to see these events. Vayhi ba'alot alav me'al mizbech hashamayma, vayal malach Hashem b'lav ha'mizbech. The malach goes up in the fire. Manoach v'ishto ro'im vayiplu apnehem artza, and they were mishtachaveh, like being in the sight of a holy sight. Pasuk Chafal Lo Yasaf Od Malach Hashem Lehi Ro'el Manoach Lishto. The Malach never returned. Az Yada Manoach Ki Malach Hashem Hu. He never came back. But the Radak says the reason how Manoach knew it is because he saw the Malach going up in the fire.
Is a Pella also a wonder?
A wonder. That's why I said that here the Mafli Lasot went back to saying that the Malach did wonders. He did multiple wonders. He drew fire from the rock, and then he went up to Shemaim in the fire.
I think it's like plural.
Pele can be a wonder.
But with the extra yud, it's like wonder, plural, I think.
Well, Mafli.
No,
Why do you Why do
I
you say
see,
plural?
I see there's a star. I'm looking at my Tanakh. I don't know, what are you learning in here?
I have Mikros Gedolos.
Okay, so the word Peli,
No, but he's umafli. We're in Pasuk Yutes. Umafli
I'm
lasso.
talking about in Pasuk Yud Ches,
Yes, where it says Peli.
right? So it says that Aleph and Yud are extra because they have no nakudos on, they have no vowels underneath them. Just the Pei has a segel on it, and the Lamed
Yes.
has a here, but the Aleph has nothing and the Yud has nothing.
Right.
They're hanging there.
Go ahead.
No, I'm just saying, so maybe that's why it's more than one wonder.
Well, but the wonder, remember there, Rashi learns Pshat V'hu Peli Mechuse. It's a hidden name. It's not revealable. And then we explain why, because Malach and a goof is one thing, or maybe because it's the name of the Shlichus, right? That's there, Peli wasn't referring yet to the Nisim. It's in this other pasuk where it says, "Vayala tzur Lashem umafli lasot." He performed wonders. Umanoch v'shtoim. And the Radak explains what wonders. He says, "Botzas eish ben atzur," taking fire from the rock, and then when the fire built up, he jumped in and he went up to Hashem.
The Targum uses the same word for both.
Say it again.
The Targum uses the same word to explain Peli and Mafli.
Let's see. The Targum says "V'hu mefaresh," and the Yutes says "Mufarish lemebit." Yeah, I'm not sure what the Targum wants there. Rashi, yeah, Rashi and the Radak learn a little differently. Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, Mitzudas David also says "Hu Peli Odshu Mechusa V'Nelam Ve'en." It's a hidden name and you can't reveal it. But then under Mafli Lasot, the Mitzudas David says Hamalach Asa Plaim Lahotzia Eish Min Atzur. Wonders, and not only that, the Plaim, the plural, is that he went up in the fire as well. Okay. So Manoach knew that it was a Malach Hashem, that he went away and he never came back. So he understood that the Malach went up in the fire and he was a Malach.
Bernie,
Go ahead, Bernie.
Yeah. First, I'm wondering whether the order of the pasuk suggests that Manoach was not a total believer, because initially after the Malach went up in a B'lavas Eish, he bowed down with his wife in the Shtachavoya. But then the next pasuk goes said, only below Yosaf or Malach Hashem Le'erosta Manoach. Only when the Malach didn't come back, Oz Yodam Manoach Ki Malach Hashem. That he's dead. So why does it have to put it at the end of the pasuk? It makes you think that maybe he still doubted that this was a Malach. It was just a dream that he was having or whatever.
But I would say once he bowed down, that's when he
So
bowing down is when he recognized it.
Why does it need to repeat it at the end of that following pasuk? Oz Yodam. Then he knew when the Malach didn't come back. Okay, just a comment.
Right. Vayomer Manoach el ishto mos namus. And Manoach said to his wife, "We're going to be killed. Ki Elokim ra'inu," or we saw the face of Hashem, or we were in the presence of such great holiness that we are deserving of death. V'tomer lo ishto lu chafetz Hashem lamitenu lo lakach me'adenu olam mincha. If the wife very intelligently responded, if Hashem wanted to kill us, he wouldn't have accepted our korban. So again, further evidence that the Isha was a milumedes, much more than the husband in this case. Again, another reason why the Malach always appeared to her initially. The Lo Heranu et Koleli also wouldn't have shown us all these miracles, that the Malach goes up and fire comes out of the rock. The Ka'et Lo Yishmi'anu, we never saw these things. Pasuk Chavda, Vateled Aisha ben, Vatikrat Shmo Shimshon. So she gave birth and they gave him a name Shimshon. Shimshon is from the word Shemesh, from the sun. Vayigdal anar, vayvarcheu Hashem. Gemara in Sota Yud, Bameh Barchu, Rav Yudam Rav Shebirchu Bamaso. He was given prodigious. His genitalia were prodigious. Amaso Kivnei Adam, the Zaro was a regular person, but the Zar Kanachal Shotev. But he had a lot of Zera. Because we're going to see, Shimshon is going to try to be a one-man terrorist group against the Plishtim, and he does it through marrying Plishtim women that he converts. We learned that last week, that he did not marry them as non-Jews, he converted them. We'll see that again tonight. But it was through this process that he was going to create jealousies among the Plishtim, and he'd be like a one-man terrorist group, because we learned last week that before he told us Klal Yisrael is weak then, the Plishtim are dominating them. And this is the beginning. That's why Shimshon's rampage through the Plishtim is the beginning of the end for the Plishtim. It's going to be completed later on with David and Goliath, etc. But that's why we said last week, Vatachel, it begins to be Moshiach at Klal Yisrael. Pasuk Chafei, Vatachel Ruach Hashem L'famo b'Machane Dan. Machane Dan is remember Dan lives right near the Gaza Strip at this time. Later, the tribe of Dan is going to move north, almost towards Lebanon. But now the tribe of Dan is near the tribe of Yehuda. Remember, we also learned that Manoach's wife was from Yehuda. So Yehuda and Dan were very close at this time. Between these two locations, says the Gemara in Yerushalmi, Sota, Amrabasi, Tsar Veshtol, Shnei Harim Gdolim Hayu. Tsar Veshtol were two mountains. The Akran Shimshon, Shimshon picked the mountains up and ground them into dust. It shows us the strength of Shimshon.
Where did you see that shot you said by Varcheu Hashem? Because I don't see any midrash, any.
That's in the Sota Daf Yud.
It's in the Gemara, yeah.
It's in the Gemara, and in Yerushalmi Sota Aleph. That's the Gemara brought by the Midrashim here.
I see.
By the way, on the words Vatachel Ruach Hashem, that the Spirit of Hashem sort of begins to pound, like lefamo. Famo is like a bell. So also in the Sech Sota Daf Tes Amud Beis, Rav Chama Rav Chanina, Chalsa, which means his kaima nevuasa shel Yaakov Avinu, Dichsiv Yehidan Nachash Ale Derech, which in Vayechi the bracha of Dan was it's going to be like a snake. Now, where does a snake bite you? On your heel, on your foot.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the remez. Remember, we said Shimshon is a one-man band. He's a one-man army. We're going to see. Nobody joins Shimshon, and Shimshon kills many
gorilla.
And a guerrilla bite. A guerrilla warfare doesn't face you in the front. He bites you from the behind. So that's the pshat of Yehida Nachash Ali Derech.
Wow, there's no one around you. You can set off fireworks, whatever. Anytime. Told you no one's gonna get hurt. No fishing's gonna be in there. Everything's good.
Okay.
But
What else is
Perek
here?
Yudal. Now we begin
trying to be really patient.
what Shimshon does.
Like, imagine how
Yeah,
scary.
we need to mute. Somebody has to
Mario, where's
mute.
that noise coming from? Mario?
What is it? Can I have something?
Amen.
Everybody's muted.
Thank you. Okay, so Pasuk Yudalad. Vayered Shimshon Timnasa. Shimshon went down to Timnah. Vayar Isha beTimnasa mibnos Plishtim. And he sees a Plishtim woman who lives in Timnah. So a number of midrashim I want to learn here. So first it says, so to daf tes, Rebbe Omer, tchilas kilkulo ba'aza, lefichach laka ba'aza. The beginning of Shimshon's downfall is in Aza. So therefore, that's where he was eventually punished in Aza. Because Delilah is from Aza. Fragt die Gemara, Vatsi vayered Shimshon timnasa, vayari shabbat timnasa miblos plishtim. So the Gemara asked, what do you mean the kilkul started in Aza? The kilkul started in Timnah with this Isha mibnos plishtim. And this Maisa of Timnah happened before the Maisa that he had in Aza. However, Tchilas Kilkulumia Ba'aza, because Kivan Shebetimna Gira Unasa B'Labala B'Derech Nus. Here in Timnah, he converted this woman and married her with Nesuin. So there was no Znus, and therefore there was no Kilkul. So therefore, it's correct. The Gemara wants to say that the kilkul happened somewhere else, not here. Another famous medrash on this pasuk from Sota Yud. Ksiv vayered Shimshon timnasa. He says he went down to Timnah. Mashma shetzarich laredes lagia leTimnah. You got to go down. Uksiv hinei chamich ole timnasa. By Yehuda, the mice of Yehuda and Tamar, the same thing, it's in Timnah. But there, Yehuda is told, your father-in-law is going up to Timnah. Here it says Shimshon went down to Timnah. And there Yehuda went up to Timnah. Amar Rabbi Lazar, Shimshon shenizgana ba. This was a bad episode for Shimshon. Ksiv be'yerida. Yehuda shnisala ba ksiv ba'aliyah. Yehuda was elevated. How did Yehuda become elevated? Remember, Yehuda eventually admitted. The word Yehuda from Hodah, from confessing. Remember, Tamar is pregnant, and Yehuda says, take her out and burn her, because she's an Eshes Ish. He didn't know that he lived with her, right? And really, she understood this was a Yibum. I remember, because Tamar married one of Yehuda's sons, Erva Onan. They died. And then he didn't want to give her to Shelah because they thought she was a Katlonis. They didn't realize that it was their bad Maisim that caused it. So at that time, the Yibum could also be done by the father. So the Yibum, the fact that Yehuda lived with Tamar was really Yibum. And in fact, from there comes out Mashiach. We can ask another question. Why in all these stories leading up to Mashiach, you have Lot and his daughters? Because remember, from Lot and his daughters come Moab. And Rus comes from Moab. And Rus is the great-grandmother of David HaMelech. So you got one crazy story with sort of like that appears that's a lot of immorality there. And then you have Yehuda and Tamar. Okay, but let's go back. Again, when Tamar says, whoever these things belong to, because Yehuda gave Tamar the staff. So Yehuda says, Sod kamimeni, she's correct. And it was embarrassing for Yehuda, and he confessed. And this is why Yehuda and David HaMelech become our king. I once heard Beryl Wine say that in Klal Yisrael, this was actually before President Trump got elected. Not talking politics here. It doesn't make a difference, but I remember this was by Uzdan's house. Mm-hmm. He said, Jewish kings have a lot of skeletons in their closet. We don't have perfect people. We have people, so therefore they can't get on too high of a pedestal because there's always something in their own closet. And therefore that's how our leaders should be. But the act of confession of Yehuda was a mala for him. So that's why there it talks that he went up to Timnah. Shimshon, this is part of the not such a good story because he followed his Einayim. It's considered a Yerida for him. Okay. And please, if anybody has any other comments they'd like to add or make, etc., please jump in. So Mario, people can unmute themselves if they want to, right?
Yes.
Okay, good. Pasuk Beis. Vayal vayaged lavivu li'imo. Shimshon's a good son. At this time, the parents would arrange the marriages. They would go to the other parents and they would make the shidduch. Vayomer ishara iti b'timnasa mibnos plishtim. I saw a woman in Timnah. Ve'ata now kuota li isha. Take her for a wife for me. Vayomer lo avivi imo. Ha'en bivnot achecha u'v'chol ami isha. What, you can't find a girl among your brethren in Klal Yisrael? Ki ata olech lakachat isha miplishtim ha'arelim. That you go to the uncircumcised plishtim? Vayomer Shimshon elaviv ota kachli. No, I want you to take her for me. Ki hi yashra be'enai. She is straight in my eyes. Or yosh, this is who I prefer. However, it says in Brachas, achrei einechem, right? V'lo satsur achrei einechem, zehir avera. Shenema vayomer Shimshon elaviv osa kachli ki hi yashra be'enai, referring to his eyes. Everything starts from the eyes. And in Hoirius it says, Amar Rav Yochanan kol hapasuk hazeh al shem aveira nemar es einov who remez lezima ki hi yashra be'enai. So again, this is a pasuk that begins to show Chazal that Shimshon has good intent. He knows he wants to get the Plishtim up, sort of to attack him, and he's going to use these as an excuse, as a pretext for attack. And initially, as we learned last week, his kavanah was correct. It's just he started following his einayim too much. As it says also in Sota Tes, Shimshon be'einav marad. He rebelled with his eyes. Shenamar vayomer Shimshon laviv ota kachli ki hi yashra be'enai. Lefichach nakru plishtim et einav. That's why in the end, his eyes were put out by the plishtim. Shenema vayochzu plishtim v'nakru einav. So Chazal see a complete connection between what's going on here with his einayim and what eventually happened to him. So v'avivi imo lo yadu ki me Hashem hi. All of this is being conducted by Hashem. Ki toanahu mevakesh me plishtim. The word toana means a pretext. He's looking for excuses to get the plishtim to be angry with him so he can attack them. Because ba'etahi plishtim moshlim b'Yisrael. Says the Malbim, Lama sidei Hashem sheshimshon nazir lokim. Shimshon is a nazir, mi betem. There haven't been many throughout our history like that. How could it be Yikachi Shabbat nos plishtim? V'chi lo hayav sharshi yamtzi ilach heret she's garesh Shimshon beplishtim beplishi chalel kedushato. There's no other way for Shimshon to have come up with ways. He had to do this way. So the Malbim says, Vayari Shabbatim Nasa Yodia Ba'atzata Sipur Ki Ayada Sabah Meit Hashem. It's all coming from Hashem. Ki Rak Ra'a Ota Be'enav V'lo Diber Ima. He didn't speak to her, he just saw her. V'hayal Lachshav Pen Lo Titav Be'enav Eiti Daber. Maybe she's not nice. How can he decide to marry without talking to her? O Pen Lo Tirtzeh Hiya O Avia O Pen Lo Tirtzeh Likaya. Maybe she won't want to convert. So therefore, Vayal, so he told his parents, Ratzalom lo dibarti ima rak ra'iti ota. So he told his parents, I saw her, I didn't speak to her. So go now. Hishtadlu shetitratzel lezeh. He tried to convince his parents to make the shidduch. And as we said, the parents said, you're going to take some of the plishtim that are our enemies. Still, Vayomer ota kachli. Uvadai ratza shetitgayer achar ratza shikhu ota lo lisha. So you notice the Malbim focus on the word kachli. We always learn kicha misdeafron. Ki yikach ish isha. The dinim of kiddushin are learned from the word kach. So the Malbim notices the word kachli. He does want to be misgayer her, and he's going to take her derech nesuin. And his parents lo yadu ki me'Hashem hi. I'm reading the Malbim. She nakem achar kach beplishtim. This is going to lead to Shimshon taking revenge against the plishtim. Umash, and here comes the Malbim answering the question he raised. Umash lo sibei Hashem siba acheret. How come Hashem didn't come up with a different method of doing this? Because at this period of time was a 40-year period where the Plishtim were ruling very strongly on Klal Yisrael. V'im hayamit gareh imahem, az hayu shofchim chamatam al Yisrael. If he was going to start shepping with the Plishtim, anger would come from the Plishtim on Klal Yisrael. Lachein sibev sheyachshavu shasina shel Shimshon yibavo ishto. Hashem made it that it's not like a Plishtim Jewish thing. It's a personal thing. Plishtim and his wife, Shimshon and his wife. To keep it out of sort of national politics. That's how the Malbim explains. Pasuk Hey. Vayerit Shimshon v'aviv imo Timnasa. Shimshon, his father and his parents go to Timnah. Vayavod karmei Timnasa. They reach the vineyards. V'hinei kfir arayot sho'eg likrato. Now, the Meforshim say that at this point, a vineyard, a Nazir can't go through a vineyard. So the parents separated, and Shimshon went alone a different derech into Timnah to circumvent the Kerem that was there. And he sees a young lion coming towards him growling. At that time, there were still lions in, like we have mountain lions. Those lions may have been real lions because, Africa, Egypt, the Sinai Desert, at that time, there were lions in Eretz Yisrael. I don't believe there are lions anymore in Eretz Yisrael. There could be mountain lions in certain parts, but not African lions. Anyways, Vatitzlach alav ruach Hashem. The Spirit of God came onto Shimshon. Vayishaseu keshes agdi. He tore the lion in half with his hands. He wasn't injured at all. V'lo higid laviv limo et asher asa. So, first of all, in the Yerushalmi, so the very interesting drasha on Vayavod Karmei Timnasa. Amar Shmuel bar Yitzchak Melamed Shayu Avi v'Imo of Marim Lo Karmei Timnasa. He showed the parents showed Shimshon these vineyards, Zruyim Kloyim. The Plishtim planted, wheat with grapes. We're not allowed to do so. Oimrim Lo, they said to their child, Bni, Kashem Shekarmeim Zruyim Kloyim, Kach Noiseim Zruas Kloyim. You shouldn't marry their daughters because it's Kloyim with us. It's a remes. And then in Zvachim Samechei, Vayishaseu b'shes agdi, ton rabbanon v'shisa, ain't shisa l'bayad. Shisa refers to tearing with your hands. And the Malbim says there was a Vatitzlach alav ruach Hashem, there was a double gvura. Number one, Shisur b'kal b'shes agdi, he tore the line like he would tear a goat. The goat is a young, easy, a domesticated goat. Like Lotav Ashel Gedi, it's very soft. And the other part, Mu'ume and the other, he wasn't injured. This is now beginning to show Shimshon, says the Malbim, Shimshon evin shekrashem zot likrato leman yakir kochel. So number one, Hashem now wants to reveal to Shimshon that he has special powers. V'yedashu muchan latzliach neged oivei Hashem. Kimosha Omer David, later in Shmuel Aleph, Mirz Hashem, we will learn this together. It says, Gamatari, Gamata Dovi Kavdecha. David also had killed a lion and killed a bear. So these are simonim that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is behind the person. And he doesn't tell his parents. Vayered vaydaber lisha. So now he speaks to the woman in Timnah. Vatisha b'nei Shimshon. And he wants to marry her now based on their conversation. Either with the parents, says the Radak, or with the woman herself. Pasuk Ches. Vayoshav miyamim lekachta. After the marriage, Vayasser lirot et mapelet aryeh. He wandered by the same area where he had killed the lion. Vinei adat dvorim b'gviat aryeh udvash. Within the carcass of the lion is a honeybee hive that has found shelter within, let's say, the rib cage of the lion, right? The lion becomes a protected area. And there's a honeycomb, there's honey, bees and honey. Vayerdeu el kapav. Oh, he came back to, I'm sorry. A year later, Shimshon came back to marry her. He has not married her yet. But on the way back to Timnah, he sees the carcass of the lion. It's filled with this honeybee. So he scraped Vayerdeu. So there's something called Redias Apas that we have in Shas. Like the way they used to bake bread is like when you see when they bake a pita. They take the dough and they slap it on the side of the oven on the inside. And Redias Apas is when you take like the pizza oven, you take like that, what do you call it? Like a mallet, not a mallet. What do you call it? When you flip an omelet? A spatula, but a wooden, when you see the pizza makers with a wooden spatula, but a big one. So that's Redias Apat. So he scraped some honey onto his hand. Vayelech haloch v'achol, and Shimshon ate from this. Vayelech laviv elimo vayten lehem vayochel, he gave to his parents. He didn't tell them that it came from the body of the lion. And Rashi tells us what by Yudeo he talks about Redias Apas. Pasuk Yud. Vayered avihu el Aisha, and his father went down and arranged the marriage. Vayasham Shimshon Mishtek Ichen Yasu Abachurim. And he had friends come to be the Shushbini, right? The sort of the groomsmen. Vayikirotam Oto, Vayichu Shloshim Mireim, Vayuito. There were 30 Chaverim that joined the wedding to be his groomsmen. Yena groomsmen, as we're going to see soon. Vayomelem Shimshon. Shimshon decides to give them a riddle. Achuda nalachem chida. I'm going to give you a riddle. Im hagei tagidu, if you can answer the riddle, otali, and I give you shivat yimei amishte umtzate. I give you 7 days, because there's going to be 7 days of yimei amishte. In Pirkei Rabbi Eliezer, it says, Shiva Siva Mishte Anu Lemeidim Yaakov Umishimshon. The fact that we celebrate 7 days after a wedding, we learn it from Yaakov and Shimshon. And Hachosim Dom LaMelech. Ma Melech HaKol Mekasno, so everybody praises the Melech. Af Hachosim Kain Kol Shiva Siva Mishte. Ma Melech Lovesh Bigdei Kovid. A king wears beautiful clothing. Af Hachosim Kain. Ma Melech Simcho Mishte Levonov Kol HaYomim. Afachosim Kol Shiva Siva Mishte. Ma Melech Ena Yotze L'Shuk Levado. He doesn't go alone. Afachosim Kain. Ma Melech Ponav Me'iros Kor, his face lights like a sun. Afachosim Kain. So the Shiva Simei Mishta we learned from not only Yaakov, which we know, because it says there Lavan also made a Mishta for 7 days, but also from Shimshon. So Shimshon says, I give you 7 days, and if you answer the riddle, 30 sheets, Ushloshim chalifot bgadim, and 30 change of clothing. V'im lo tuchli lagid li, if you can't answer me, unetatem atem li shloshim stim, you give me 30 sheets. Ushloshim chalifot bgadim. Vayomru lo, so they said, Chuda chidatzcha v'nishma, fine, we accept the challenge. Tell us your riddle and we will hear it. Now, why did they accept? I mean, why did they accept this riddle? So the Malbim says they were 30. They figured that among the 30 of them, against one, they'll be able to come up. But this was such a unique episode that he gave them a riddle on. It was going to be impossible for them to know. What does he say? Yomer lehem, meha ochel yatzam meichel. From food, meha ochel, from a predator will come food, right? Because remember, the lion is a predator. And now in the belly of the lion is this honey thing. Ume'az yatzam matog, right? Right. The ochel, the lion, is an eater. From the eater will come food. Me'az is from something strong. Yatzam matok will come sweet. He had something very specific in mind. How are they going to come up with that? And they couldn't do it for the first 3 days. Now here, Rashi jumps in, Limosa Shabbos. We're talking about, it's Shabbos. It's the 7th day of the week, the Lo Shvila Mishta. But it's only the Hu Revila Mea Mishta. It's only the 4th day of the party. There's going to be 3 days left. Vayomru le'eshes Shimshon Patias Ishech. So these 30 guys come on to the wife of Shimshon and say, listen, you have to seduce your husband and you have to get this answer out of him. Vayagid lanu tachita, and then you will tell us the answer. And what happens if not? Penisrof otach lebetavich ba'esh. We will burn you and your parents' family in fire. Hali arshenu kratem lanu halo. Did you invite us to this wedding to make us poor? Pasuk Tezayim. Vatevk Esha Shimron Allah. So Shimshon's wife began to nag him and cry. Vatomer rak snetani v'lo avat. You hate me. You don't love me. Hachida chadatal of ne'ami. You've told my people of my city this riddle. V'liloi gadatam. You haven't given me the riddle. Vayomer la. What do you mean? Hine laviu le'miloi gadati v'lach hagid. I haven't even told my parents. I'm going to tell it to you. Vatevka lav shivat hayamim. She didn't stop pestering and nagging. Ashrayala mamishtel all the 7th day. Vahi bayom hashvi'i. And Shimshon couldn't hold out. Vayagid la ki hetzikasu. He couldn't hold back. She had distressed him. Vataged achida livnei ama. So he told her, and she told the people. So they came before the sun had set. Mama tok midvash. What is sweeter than honey? Ume'az me'ari. And what is more powerful than a lion? So, vayomer lahem lulei charashtem be'eglati. If you hadn't plowed with my calf, referring to his wife, lo mitzatem chidati, you would not. It's a mashal, says Rashi. And a number in Sanhedrin Chafalef, the Gemara in Sanhedrin says, Omer Rav Egla zu Michal. There's in Shmuel, they're going to call Michal, the wife, the daughter of Shaul, who ends up marrying David, also an Egla. V'lama nikra shma Egla. Shechaviva laval David ke Egla. David liked her like a calf. V'cheinu Omer she'egla hu kinui shel chiba. It's a word of love, like it says by Shimshon, lulei charashtem be'eglati.
Don't try to use it on us.
Vatitzlach alav ruach Hashem. Same
Like
language.
Shepsela. They say Shepsela.
My Shepsela. So again, the ruach Hashem comes onto Shimshon. Vayered Ashkelon. He doesn't go to Timnah. He goes to another Plishtim city, Ashkelon. Vayach mehem shloshim ish. He kills 30 people. Vayikachet chalitzotam, takes their clothing. Vayitena chalifot lemagidei achida. Midrashim say he sold everything, and from what he took from these people he killed, and sold it, and bought the clothing that he owed to these people. Vayichara po vayal beit avihu. And he was very angry, and he went back to his own house and left his wife. And vatihi eshes shimshon lemirei asher re'elo. And the family of this wife that Shimshon had married was given in marriage to one of his friends who he had befriended. So the wife of Shimshon, when Shimshon left to go back to his father's house, was given as a wife to one of these friends, quote unquote friends, of the 30 friends. So she's committing adultery with one of these plishtim. Now, says the Radak in Nazir Dalid Amid Beis, Ki muter hayalo when it says Vayach mehem shloshim ish, how could he kill them? If he's a Nazir, and one of the prohibitions of a Nazir is not being metamil amesim. Says the Radak, muter hayalo litamil amesim afal pishaya Nazir, ki hamalach amar nizir elokim yanar. Shimshon never didn't make a neder hareni nazir. It was given to him by Hashem. So only the things that the Malach mentioned were going to be prohibited, which means haircut and wine. He could kill them and take their clothes off. If we didn't say that, he could have maybe killed them with a rock or from distant, and he wouldn't touch them. So we see very clearly that it's not an issue.
Who did Shimshon kill?
He killed 30 people in Ashkelon.
Not his friend.
No, not the friend. That's going to happen next week. Let's hold on. Right now, he went to Ashkelon, killed 30 to get their clothing, sold them, and gave the clothing to the 30 people that he promised because he lost the riddle. I just want to read more Radak. He's giving terutzim maybe how he could have gotten their clothing without touching them, because maybe he took their clothing off before he died. Or maybe he told other plishtim to take their clothes off. Maybe he would only be careful not to touch dead people b'makom mitzvah. V'hamilchama b'plishtim mitzvah hayta lilachem b'hem u'loshiet Yisrael miyadam u'me'Hashem hayakol. Like it said, ki me'Hashem hi. V'hinei kiblu rabotenu ki nazir mitamil l'meis mitzvah. Meaning, a nazir cannot go to a funeral, but let's say a meis mitzvah is in your town, a Jewish person dies and there's no one to bury him. That's called a meis mitzvah. So the din is anybody can be metame, including a nazir. So the Radak gives tirutzim as well, according to those people who hold that maybe he was careful about tumas meis. But in general, Chazal say that a nazir shimshon, somebody takes naziris for life, doesn't have to do that. And says, and it's actually a Gemara in Nazir. Rabbi Yehuda Omer Nazir Shimshon Mutter l'tamil l'mesim. Sheken matzino b'Shimshon shenitma uminolon ditamil l'mesim. How do we see that he was b'tamil l'mesim? Me'acha vayach mehem shloshim ish vayikachas chalitzosehem. Maybe he took their clothing off and then killed them, because it says vayach vayikach. No, he killed them and then he took. So very nice. Chazal giving us, really fleshing out the story for us, both halachically and hashkafically, etc. Any comments, any discussion that regarding this week's beginning we're going to have 3 episodes in Shimshon's life. This woman, we're going to have another woman, and then finally Delilah. And, we'll build it up. Any comments, any ha'aros?
He doesn't seem to learn his lesson about women.
Well, we'll see. This is the
Isn't
first.
all of this a ruse to just start up with the Plishtim and destroy them?
Yes.
He's a great tzaddik, and the whole
Yes.
generation was at very high level.
The whole generation what?
Was at a higher level than the Tanoim and Amoram. They still had Nevi'im, and the people are seeing Malachim. There's a generation level that we can't really understand it just at the simple surface.
Absolutely. Like we said, but you see somehow on the level, like the tzaddikim are judged kechut hasara. So on whatever level Shimshon was, he was in Nazir Hashem. I learned a bunch of chazals today showing that somehow his einayim led, there was a midah keneged midah. So yes, absolutely. Now, we've also been seeing that the level of Klal Yisrael has shrunk from the time of Yoshua to Othniel ben Knaz, Ehud ben Geret, Dvorah. We've seen a diminution in the status of the Shoftim that were, for example, Yiftach was a robber that we know. Yiftach Bedoro Kishmul Bedoro. He was the Gadol Ador of that generation. But we do see Othniel ben Knaz was able to return 300 halachos bil pulpulo. So we don't see that the later Shoftim were in that category. And we also see more interaction by the people in the Baal and the Ashtaros. It was midah keneged midah. They were given the leaders that they deserved. So absolutely, we have this tradition that by the time the Bnei Midbar, we're on a much holier level as we go down. You read the Sadoros. Absolutely. There weren't Nevi'im yet. The times of the Nevi'im are going to start by Shmuel.
No, didn't he think the man was a Navi, that Malach? He thought it was a Navi.
Right, but he was wrong. No, but
Because he was a
Pinchas
Malach, which is, they were seeing a Malach, so that's
even higher.
a higher level than seeing a Navi.
Okay.
But no, the point is, he started up with the women. I thought the whole thing was to prevent the Plishtim from retaliating against
Klal
the nation. So he made it appear the whole ruse was he's got all these marital problems, but in the meantime, he'll just wipe them out.
Right. It's like we said tonight. He is like a terrorist. Klal Yisrael is not on the level now where they can attack the Plishtim. So he begins to attack them and hurts them. We're going to see he hurts them. He begins the beginning where David is going to complete the wiping out of Plishtim. Absolutely. And he keeps it personal. It's revenge because of his wives and all this.
And he has a bad temper.
Like we said tonight, it's all from Hashem. Hashem choreographed it. And however we will see, does Shimshon do something that merit why Chazal learn the Chazals we did today by 9? We don't see it yet, but we might see it going further. We'll see. And then, of course, we have to understand. I saw something that Ravon Kotler said, or there was. Yeah. Ravon Kotler said, the principle that if one is required to perform an unpleasant act for the sake of a mitzvah, he must do so with completely pure motives. If his intentions are tainted by personal considerations, the act may well be considered a sin. This principle, said Rav Aaron, can be applied to Shimshon. His marriages to Philistine women were indeed necessary, but as he progressively relied more and more on his own judgment, his spiritual state declined. This is a Rav Aaron, and there's many other. We will hopefully discuss some of the other commentaries on the difficulty of studying Shimshon. Absolutely, but I think we last week we had a long introduction to this issue of Shimshon. We read a number of Chazals and the Radak and the Rabag who clearly say that he converted all of his wives. He converted them. He did not marry them as Plishtim, and both the Radak and the Rabag explained how he fell. Initially, his motives were good, and then his motives later on maybe changed a little bit.
Thank
Any
you.
other comments or any other discussions or any responses?
Oh, good.
Okay.